I'm going to try to make this as objective as possible. Hey guys, and welcome back to Music Major Vlogs. Yes, these are still a thing. Welcome to my apartment, since it's the first time you guys are seeing it, even though I've lived here since August. Or at least you're seeing the singular corner of my room that's not a disaster right now. This beanie matches the wall. I should have thought about that a little bit better. This is the first Music Major vlog I've done since July, and for that I sincerely apologize. Last semester was absolutely crazy, and my life kind of fell apart a little bit. But I don't want to talk about any of that today. I want to talk about whether or not marching band is a sport, because I'm assuming that's why you clicked the video. Yes, the age-old debate that no one can seem to agree on. I used to think that anybody who was in marching band would say yes, and anybody that said no was simply uninformed. But when I made reference to it in the third Marching Band is Vines video, I got a surprising number of comments telling me that I'm wrong and marching band isn't a sport. So a while back now, I asked you guys to tell me what you thought and give me your reasons. Now ignore the percentages from that poll. I knew from the beginning that it was going to be extremely lopsided because those are the people that watch my channel. I was more interested in the arguments that you left in the comments, and boy howdy was there some contentious debate. Let me preface this by saying that my answer is yes. Marching band is a sport. Hear me out before you click out of the video. I'm not going to ask you to agree with me without giving an argument. Matter of fact, all the points I'm going to bring up today came directly from the comments on that poll. But I will acknowledge that I am absolutely biased, so feel free to take my opinions with a grain of salt. Let's break this down. To start off, we need to define two things. What is a sport and what is marching band? To me, an activity needs three criteria to be considered a sport. It requires physical and mental exertion, there are many hours of required practice and training, and there is some form of competition. I know what you're thinking, I'll get back to that last one in a second. And then what is a marching band? Well, we all know on a base level what a marching band looks like, a group of people in weird looking uniforms marching around with instruments. But let's look at it a little more specifically than that. To my mind, if we're calling it a sport, we're looking specifically at bands that perform a field show. Pep bands don't count, and parade bands don't count. Circling back, yes, I am aware that not all marching bands compete. First off, you're a boss, because it's so much more rewarding to be your own thing than simply existing to support the football team all the time. But more importantly, when I talk about marching band being a sport, I say that as a general rule. I think it's safe to say that the majority of marching bands these days partake in some form of competition. Now you're just bending the rules, Katie. I don't think so. I think all rules have their exceptions. Swimming is inarguably a sport, but when I get home and jump in my pool on a hot summer's day, I would not call that a sport in and of itself. Well, what about Ram Band? You guys don't compete. Excuse me, tell that to the band that just won the Souther Trophy last year. Oh, and as an aside, I'm including drum corps in my definition of marching band. I know there are some key differences, and to call them the same thing would be disrespectful, but for the purpose of this argument, they more or less share the same traits that would make them a sport. Okay, so accepting these points, at least for now, marching band clearly ticks up all three of those boxes in this definition of a sport. But let's get more into it than that, because there are a lot of traits that generally accepted sports tend to share. I have combed through your comments, and let's take a look at some of the most common arguments both for and against marching band being a sport. First argument in favor, it requires a lot of physical and mental strength. This one should be pretty obvious, but apparently I have to elaborate. Obviously, there's the mental requirements of learning your drill and your music, but it's not just something you learn and then by the show you're just on autopilot. There is a lot of mental stamina required. You can't afford to lose focus or forget something, because if you do, you will be hit in the head with a rifle. Marching band shows can be between 7 and 12 minutes. That's a long time to stay mentally engaged, especially when you're thinking about 6 different things at once. Along the same lines, that's also a long time to carry and play an instrument. You know when you run some laps and you're breathing real heavy at the end of it? Well, try marching at 180 BPM or more and having to focus and control your air in order to get a beautiful sound out of your instrument. It's hard enough to get proper air support sitting down, let alone running around in the sun in heavy wool uniforms. And don't think percussion and guard don't have it just as bad. There's a video on DCI's YouTube channel where they measured the vitals of a tenor drummer during his show. I won't get too into it, I'll just link the video in the description, but suffice to say, his numbers went through the roof. You know how heavy those drums are? Tenors can weigh between 25 to 35 pounds. Bass 5, around a 32-inch drum, about 15. A full-size marching contra, between 25 and 30 pounds, all on your shoulder, I might add. And a sousaphone can be up to 50 pounds. Would you like to try it? Even the lighter instruments can feel much heavier when you've been holding them up for a long time. Brass, keep your bells up, 10 degrees above the horizon. A mellophone is only 4 pounds, but it takes a lot of strength to hold it up at that angle for an extended period of time. Strength that you need to develop over time. And if you don't believe me, let me introduce you to 8th grade me. One of these things is not like the others. All of those tall guys standing around me were juniors and seniors. See the difference? Although in my defense, I was really sick that day. With all that laid out, it really pains me that one of the arguments I saw against marching band being a sport was, what's so hard about walking around with instruments? Yeah. People went there. Don't say that to a marching band kid ever. I'll reiterate, marching, not walking, at 180 beats per minute, that's 3 steps a second, in hot, sweaty uniforms, carrying heavy instruments in uncomfortable positions, and keeping precise control of your breathing, all while staying mentally engaged. Tell me more about how easy all that is when you're watching from the sideline, because I'd love to see you try it. Next argument in favor, there is a period of conditioning. Some people actually tried to say that there isn't, to which I very much disagree. One commenter said that band camp is not conditioning, to which I say, what band camp are you going to? Because where I'm from, that is just untrue. Even if your band camp is mostly about learning the show itself, there's usually several weeks of practice before band camp, where you learn how to march. And yes, marching, even by itself, is hard. Regardless of what your preferred style is, you have to look exactly the same as the people around you. You march a straight leg technique, you better have straight legs. Roll stepping, your toes better be high enough that I can see the logo on the bottom of your shoe. Upper body carriage, keep your core tight or you'll hear every step in your sound. Get in the form. If it's a straight line, you better not be able to see past the person next to you. 8 to 5, 6 to 5, 16 to 5, 4 to 5. Better start jazz running, that's its own animal in and of itself. You better respond to those vocal commands faster than Pavlov's dogs. If you hear Bantan Hut, you better move so quick and so in sync that I did not even see you move. And by God, keep your instrument up. There's a reason my horn angle looks a lot better now than it did my first year of marching. I wouldn't be surprised if my walking stride is 22.5 inches. And frankly, I've been marching for 8 years now and I still get told my technique sucks. It's a good thing I make up for it by being a good player. Speaking of which, believe it or not everybody comes into marching band already knowing how to play their instrument. I know there are bands out there that are by audition only, but when you can't get enough people to fill up the field, you get who you can and you teach them. I should know, I'm from South Jersey, the world capital of Group 1 bands. There were 5 people in my brass section my senior year. That's it. And only 3 of us were playing our primary instruments. And if you think other sports don't require you to learn specific skills like this, I've tried to throw a football, I've tried to hit a tennis ball, and I've tried to catch a baseball. Call me crazy, but if my epic failure to be good at any of those things is any indication, there's a bit more to it than meets the eye. Next 2 arguments against band being a sport I'm going to put together because they both kind of lead to the same flaw in logic. You're not competing against someone who's on the same field at the same time, and the scoring is not objective. Let's take a look at the world's most famous sporting event, the Olympics. Not competing against someone at the same time. Okay, let's see here. Ski jump, canoe slalom, bobsleighs. Yeah, I've seen cool runnings. And then there are the sports that are both done one individual or team at a time and have subjective scoring. Synchronized swimming, figure skating, gymnastics. And before you say that all these have specific criteria that the judges are looking for, so does marching band. If it's good enough for the Olympics, it's good enough for me. Point in favor. In most schools these days, to be in marching band, you have to get a physical. Yeah, those things you get from your doctor verifying that you're not going to drop dead if you try to do intense physical activity. I joke, but that's actually really important. Marching band, like any other sport, has its own set of dangers, and the school needs to know of any health issues you may have because they need to be able to ensure your safety. Marching band kids can and do joke about how hot it can get during band camp, and people who casually complain about the summer heat don't know what heat really is. But in all seriousness, standing out in the sun for hours and hours on end, especially when you're doing physical activity, can be very dangerous if you're not taking care of yourself properly. No matter what your sport is, you have to stay hydrated, drink lots of water and electrolytes. You have to eat before practice. Don't be me sophomore year of Ram Band. That day was only a 2-hour rehearsal and I threw up. 0 out of 10 stars, would not recommend. And for the love of God, please wear sunscreen. Even when it's cloudy, the sun is still damaging your skin. Don't stand there and say you don't burn. Just because you can't see or feel it doesn't mean there's not damage being done. Take care of yourselves, please. Speaking of of standing in the sun for hours, did you know that most marching bands practice just as long as, if not longer than, other sports? Obviously, this can vary, but let's look at some numbers. Obviously, you've got band camp where you're practicing 9 to 9, 5 days in a row. Regular season practices, at least for my high school, were 6 to 9 twice a week minimum. That may not sound like a lot, but then you factor in competition days. We competed every Saturday and some Sundays for 2 months. There were some competition days that I could potentially get called in at 8 a.m. and not get home till midnight. I don't know if it ever got quite that ridiculous depending on what time we performed, but you know what I mean. And no, not all of that time is spent practicing, but a lot of it is, and just think about having to do that the entire weekend and then going back to school on Monday. We don't sleep. Now, do other sports work just as hard? Absolutely, but that's my point. You can't say that we don't work hard enough to be called a sport. Also, apparently, at some schools, you can get class credit for sports, including marching band. Whether this be PE credit or its own class, that's an indication of just how many hours go into it. And yes, I get credit for it in college. For all those hours, I get a whopping 1 credit. But according to some commenters, they get credit for it at their high schools. To which I say, what school did you go to? Because my high school didn't give a shit. Going back to the argument against marching band being a sport, marching band works harder than a sport, and calling it a sport is insulting. Honey, sit down. Now we're getting into the arguments that you usually hear from people that are bitter that bands don't get the respect they deserve. And fair enough, but trying to give yourself credit doesn't mean you have to discredit anyone else. One commenter with this argument said, it's not fair to compare the rush of football to the beauty of a marching show. Now listen, I will be the first to admit that I am no expert on football. I only know enough to know if the birds are doing well or if things could be better. Who even won the Super Bowl last night? I stopped paying attention when the Eagles got knocked out. Who was even playing? Was it the Chiefs and the Seahawks, I think? Anyway, but there are people that dedicate their lives to analyzing the intricacies of football, the planning, the decisions, the techniques, and to those people there is beauty in it. Football teams learn forms just like marching bands do. They learn to read and trust each other like a team should. And in addition, if you think there's not a rush in a marching band show, I question whether you've actually marched before. I'd say, quite frankly, band shows are probably run on about 50% adrenaline at least. This brings me to the final and my favorite argument against marching band being a sport. Marching band is not a sport, it is a performing art. Whoever said it can't be both? Not sure if you knew this, but WGI's full official name is WGI Sport of the Arts. I see lots of my friends walking around wearing sweatshirts that say marching athlete. Our band director's official university title is Director of Athletic Bands. I don't understand why these two things are seen as mutually exclusive. They're not. And I think pretending they are is an insult to both. I feel like mostly this idea comes from the stereotypical media portrayal of a marching band as being like the wimpy, nerdy kid, she said, drinking from a Frozen 2 water bottle. This was a gift, by the way. Okay, a lot of band kids tend to be on the nerdy side, but I don't think we can be called unathletic, at least not during the season. And yes, there are a lot of ways that marching band is different from other more traditional sports. And I even pointed out at the beginning of the video that there is some gray area in whether any individual marching band fits the criteria of a sport. But to write it off completely would be denying its worth. Sports in our culture are placed on a pedestal higher than any other activity. And to deny that recognition to an activity that works just as hard, both physically and mentally, highlights the double standard that we often see applied to the arts. Why do we think so many arts programs spend every day fearing that their funding is going to be cut, and yet their football teams get new uniforms every year? As both a musician and a teacher, it's about time we stop writing off the accomplishments of a group of students who dedicate their lives to what they do. So, is marching band a sport? Well, I'll state outright, my opinion has not changed. While there are certain circumstances where it might lack the competitive aspect, in most cases, I think it absolutely could be considered a sport. But let me know what you think. Do you believe marching band is a sport? Did any of these arguments change your mind? Was my argument too biased? It's entirely possible. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe for more from me. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram. The links are in the description down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you real soon.